G'day and welcome to the Inforunners. I'm Execute. You can tell I've got my voice back a little bit this week, and I'm joined by Mr.
Algared, how you going, guys?
Good. And this week's episode is all about ships that benefit from being in a fleet. And this episode was kind of brought to us by someone that left a comment in our Mercury Buyer's Guide section. And as you can see there, just on the end of his comment, he's put, I would like a video that points out ships that require fleet support. And after Algared and I spent 5 hours working this out, I would like to kill him. This was a very, very loaded question. It took a long time to unpack. We thought it was going to be really simple, but it was really quite complicated. We had some heated debates, and we had to in the end, we had to add a third category. So it's not just ships that are solo or fleet, but it's also ships that fall in the middle and what percentage they fall into solo and fleet, because we found that there were instances where they were really good at both. And that kind of leads us off into the next part. This list we took straight from the ship matrix, so that's the order they were given to us, and that is the order we're going to present them into you. We'll try and group them where possible, and yeah, so we'll kick it off from there. Algared, do you want to take us away with the first one?
Yeah, so this is our fleet list, the ships that benefit from either having a home base or working or having a mothership or working with another ship in as escort. And so the first 4 ships on that list, the Argo range, the Merlin and the Archimedes, are all snob ships. They all rely on their mothership. Neither of them have jump drive, neither of them have a quantum drive. So they are really tied to their local space. So the cargo and pargo, as I like to call them, they're the little tender ships for the Javelin and the Idris, and the Merlin and the Archimedes are the P-52, P-72, which come with the Constellation range of ships.
I just realised it's not on this list, but I know another one that would go there, and that's the cutter for the Reclaimer. I only just thought of that right then. That would go on that list as well, in exactly the same spot.
And it would go in that position exactly in that same spot as well. So that's our first of the ships for the fleet.
Yep. So the next one up is obviously the Avenger Warlock. This one obviously will work in tandem with other little group and work as an interceptor. It also doesn't have any cargo at all, so that basically means it's kind of locked into one role, and its role is obviously as an interceptor, and that's going to be best done with it stopping the ships and some other fighters helping out clean up whatever it's stopped.
Next on the list is the basically this group are really just our straight merchantmen, our straight cargo haulers, the Taurus, the Caterpillar, the Hull, C, D, and E. These ships are there. Yeah, you could do them all. They could all function by themselves, but for example, the Taurus, we don't know how many missiles it's got. On the ship matrix, it's listed as to be determined. But we do know it has lost its P-52 docking clamp, and it's also lost its lower turret. So this is a ship that really benefits from having, and really requires or wants, an escort vessel. The Caterpillar, the original concept of the Caterpillar was it was basically Drake's mothership, the home ship that worked in concert with
the other Drake ships.
The other Drake ships, yeah. I just went blank. Blonde moment, no hair moment, whatever it is, I don't know.
You used to that here, Dora.
And then we've got the C, D, and E. Now these ships are ships that haul a lot of cargo. They're going to be tempting targets, and neither of them are really heavily armored, and they don't really have that great a speed if they need to try and get away. And so these ships really do require an escort vessel to function safely.
And then, of course, we've kind of got 3 capital ships there on the list, the Idris, the Javelin, and the Polaris, and they're all kind of the mothership home bases. So naturally, they are part of the fleet because the fleet works around them. So your size of your fleet's almost determined by what kind of capital ship you're running with. Where a Polaris could technically go out on its own and do a bit of an escort with just one fighter inside it. Something as large as the Javelin obviously may even have another Idris or Polaris with it. It may be that big. But they definitely are the home base for most of these ships on this list.
Following on with that, we have the Vanguard Hoplite and the Prowler. Both of these are drop ships. We know that the Hoplite lost its crew quarters. They got that back section, which in the other ships of the module is just the full crew quarters with a larger back door. And these ships really are tied to a big ship. We know that the Javelin hangar was originally designed to be able to take the Redeemer when it was solely a drop ship, or when it was the only drop ship for that matter. I actually tend to think that if Redeemer does keep its dropship capability, it really does need to be here. But we're not really sure where it's going to be. I kind of think and hope that it's going to lose that dropship capability and be more of a gunship. But that's yet to be determined. We don't know. But certainly these two ships are designed to be with a bigger ship, transporting troops to and fro, whether base to base or from ship to base. But whatever, these are your
Dropships.
Your dropships.
Up next, we've got the Pioneer, which is obviously a flying factory. So I think that kind of stands for itself. It's going to need cover getting to its location, and it's going to need cover while it's working, building your home away from home. And I think that kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah. Especially when we remember that the Pioneer, they said when it's building, it's going to light up the area like a Christmas tree. So anyone far and wide is going to say, "Ooh, Pioneer, they're building. Let's go get it." So you're really going to want that to be supported with other ships or other assets. And finally is the A2 bomber. This ship, with all its weapons basically pointing downwards, really does need escorts. And even when it's doing its bombing run, it wants to have escorts to stop other things getting on it. But even when it's just flying around and getting to its target, it's going to need that support.
It's also an expensive ship.
It's an expensive ship, and the ordnance is also going to be as expensive. So this is a ship that you're going to want to back up and support. And so that is that's on our list for that reason. And that pretty much sums up the ships that we thought these ships cannot function without other ships in concert or with them. Moving on, we go to our ships that we think are basically the ships that can function by themselves. Do you want to start us off on this list, Execute?
Yeah, so you can see there I've written base starters. So a lot of those ships there right at the top are the starting ships, and they basically, while they're fragile and would benefit from being in a fleet, they're not designed to do so. So we've kind of taken a little bit of an angle here with like a real world scenario. Like, while it would be awesome to do this, you never would do it because of this, if that makes any kind of sense. So your starters, your advanced starters that are on this list are not ever really going to be in a fleet scenario. There will be a little odd exception, but in most cases they are going to be better off on their own. And that's what this list is. Ships that work best on their own.
And so starting off that list, we have I suppose we've got the Avenger. The Avenger list really is the first of the ships that function themselves. We've often called the Avenger an advanced starter ourselves. We actually think it's the best starting ship to get if you're starting off. It's got cargo, it's got guns, it's a nice size. The rework does make it look very fancy. But this ship, because of what it's got, and because it can do pretty much everything, is a ship that can function by itself. It doesn't need others to be with it to function.
And by the same merit, going up the chain, I'm going to put the next 3 in one hit here. So you got the Cutlass, the Constellation, and the Freelancer. They all kind of do a similar role, just in varying slightly different sizes. So I think for the same reason as the Avenger kind of falls into this one as well. They're just a scaling of the ship getting larger and larger. They're kind of like a jack of all trades series of ships, master of none type of thing. So that's kind of where they fall.
Yeah, and with the Constellation, it's still referred to as a space superiority ship. So in the recent town hall on the Mercury, John Crew, that's how he described the Constellation. It is your space superiority ship with its million missiles, to quote him. Even though it's only got about 58, but million missiles, lots. But the Constellation series, in that sense, fall into that category. Then we come to the Cartoon Al, or the Cartoon Me, as I usually refer to it.
We had a few little disagreements on this one, I'm going to be honest, but I kind of put my foot down on it in the end. And Algared, do you want to, I'll do it. We were talking, and Algared's like, this is the type of ship you would leave in the back of your Idris until you need it. And I was kind of like, but you hardly ever need it.
You could leave it. You could leave it in the back of an Idris or a ship to.
You could. So this could technically fall into the both category, but I was like, you use it so infrequently for what it does, because this ship is the Wormhole navigation optimization ship. And if you don't know what that means is, they kind of basically said that you're going to be able to navigate wormholes, and then if you navigate them better, they'll use less fuel. So that's kind of what this ship's been really narrowed down to, without going into too much detail. And if you think about that as a use, you're not going to be doing that a lot. And so it's the type of ship that'll sit back in your hangar on a planet, and you'll go get it when you need it. It's not the type of thing that really needs to sit with a fleet, because you're always going to have a better option 9 times out of 10 over this ship, unless you're like really into exploring, again, limited use scenarios. So I forced it onto this list. So if you want to blame anyone, blame me.
And even though it is called, the Cartwell Scout, there are better scouts out there. Its main asset is the fact that it's very maneuverable, and that's about it, really.
Yeah, it can do a few of the other things that the other guys do, but they all do it better. But it's one thing that it does really well, is that wormhole navigation and obviously optimization to make the runs more fuel efficient.
Yep. We then come to the Retaliator. The Retaliator is a ship that, depending on the modules you put in this ship, will excel even more so as a standalone ship, or possibly work better with a fleet. But because overall we've put it in as a standalone ship, it can do its mission by itself. It's a stealthy type ship. It's got a large crew, so it's got lots of turrets as well. It's got missiles. If you take out the missile bay, one of the missile bays, and put a cargo pod in there, you can run cargo. So it can do pretty much everything by itself, and fulfill numerous roles.
Larger ship that's stealth, so it's a bit more self-sufficient. A lot of the stealth ships are self-sufficient, but this one even more so because it's larger. Yeah. So obviously the Redeemer, we talked about this a little bit beforehand. Exact same reason why it's on the list here now. We feel that it's going to eventually be a gunship, as we talked about on a previous episode. I'm going to put in a card up here. So if you want to watch that episode, click on it up there. And it'll be in that episode. 890 jump. I'll talk about this one. 890 jump. Like a lot of the Origin ships, they are really self-reliant. It is really VIP suite shopping mall flying in the sky. Got all these guns on it to defend itself. You don't want any other ships around you cramping your look, because they just look ugly compared to this thing. So yeah.
And while you could class it as a fleet ship, it does have the 85X or the X85. I never remember which order that is. And possibly be able to take fit the Razor in its hangar, or the M50. It's a ship that's fast enough to run away if it gets into combat, but it can't deal with, and it's got enough firepower to actually stand on its own. So it's kind of a ship that really doesn't want to have others working with it.
I guess if you count the other ships as a snub, this probably should have gone in our both list, because it really can stand its ground on its own. But if it has those snub fighters, it's probably our smallest mini fleet. Let's just leave it at that. So it's our smallest little mini fleet, the 89 Jump on its own. The Carrack, Lone Explorer. Your home away from home, literally. It's got lots of amenities, med bays, crew of 8, you can land, explore, do all that jazz. So I think that really doesn't need much explanation.
Yeah, before the Carrack came out, I used to think that the Idris was the penultimate ship for being, doing the Star Trek 5-year mission of exploration. But when the Carrack came out, and certainly after it grew, the Carrack became the ship of choice for being that, reliving Star Trek.
It's the most popular ship in the game from purchase sales. So that tells you a lot.
Apart from even above the Aurora?
Maybe above the Aurora. Okay, all right. Above the Aurora, but I mean let's just say, let me rephrase that. Big ships, it is the bee's knees. There we go, I'll leave it at that.
And I think it is because of that, what it can do, and also the crew size, and it kind of ticks those boxes. A bit like the Mercury does in terms of picking up that Star Trek, the Star Wars vibe. I think the Carrack picked up that Star Trek vibe a lot better, and so I think that's why. But yeah, it's a ship that can function by itself. Anyway, the Herald. Kind of an advanced starter, but it's a ship that I think it'll actually still have value and use.
Doesn't become redundant.
Doesn't become redundant as many of the others. And it's fast, so it can get itself out of trouble if it does get itself in trouble. There'll always be that use for that info gathering stuff. So it can function by itself. Doesn't have much cargo, but it does have a lot of the other stuff that you expect or hope with ships.
Yeah, so the next one's the Vanguard series. So we've got the Warden, the Sentinel, and the Harbinger, with the exception of the Hoplite, which is a dropship. These are all long-range vessels. They are meant to be out there on their own. I don't think you need to explain much more than
that. Genesis Starliner. As it seems with a lot of the ships of the Crusader line, they are ships that can function by themselves. This ship may not be heavily armored, but it is your jet. It is your get there quick, and if it runs into trouble, it's just going to hit the afterburners and hopefully be out of there. So again, based on its role, based on what it does, and based on what it should be able to do, it can pretty much stand alone.
Now, the Defender, while it could really work well with a merchantman and be in a fleet, this is again probably one we should have put in the both list, but it's got a bed. It's a 2-seater. It's got a lot of the stuff that the Saber's got on it. You could literally use this as a small runaround vessel because of all those things we mentioned. So it literally could be on its own. It's one of the reasons the Defender's our favourite fighter, because it can break outside the fighter mould, so to speak.
Yeah, and while it's a fighter, it doesn't seem to need or necessarily need another ship to be a mothership for it. It can stand on its own in that regard. Then we come to the 600i.
You can make this one really short and sweet. It's just like the Constellation. It's a Constellation competitor. Done. That's why it's in the list, same as the Constellation.
Yeah, it's nice, big, done. And the Hawk. The Hawk, I actually think, could probably benefit from being in a bigger ship, but it's a profession starter. Bounty hunting is a profession generally you want by itself. The only reason I think this benefits from being in a fleet is the fact that it doesn't have a bed. It's limited by range, and so you're either going to do lots of little jumps to get to your target, or you're going to have another ship take you there. But generally, for what it does, it can do it.
If you're not doing bounty hunting solo in this ship, you're doing it in something bigger, and it's obviously a fleet-based thing. So that's why this is on the list as solo.
Yep. So that brings us to our ships that are kind of in the middle.
So
and, there you can.
These numbers on the side, the left-hand side number is how solo we think they are. The right-hand side number is how fleet-based we think they are. So that first one, as you can see, is 60-40, so 60%, 40%. Go for it, Algared.
So we think the Prospector 60-40, 60% it can do solo stuff and function perfectly as a solo ship. But it does have this fatal flaw. And the fatal flaw is, even though it's got 12 saddlebags, it can only ever use 4 of them at a time unless it's got another ship to take them away. So it loses.
I thought it was 8, but I honestly can't remember. But yeah, close enough.
But it loses that ability. You can't sit there and use all its cargo space or all its ability for storing ore at any one time. You need to have something else to take those bags away. And so it really benefits from, or would benefit from, having another ship with it. But as we see at the moment, people use it by itself. We're not loading up with another ship, and we can do the job.
I'm going to eat half this list in one go. See all those ones that say 2080? They're all kind of fighters, and they are really good at fighting. And because they don't have any cargo, they're not so great at it. While, yeah, you can go out and you can do simple little destroy stuff missions, that's about all they can do. And because they don't have, a lot of them don't have jump drives and stuff like that, they're really limited to the area and distance they can travel, and it'll be very slow and quite, lots of one little jumps type of thing. So those ships benefit enormously from a fleet, but we couldn't put them all into a fleet because we felt that they could go both ways. So everything on that list, from the Hornet series right down to the Eclipse, with the exception of the F7C, which Algared will tell you about right now.
Yep. And just to tack onto that, those ships with the 2080, when you look at the description, most of them are referred to as carrier-borne ships. Even the Scythe, Blade, and Glaive, they are Vanguard carrier-borne ships. But the F7C, we've got it as 50-50, because even though it's a Hornet, it does have that cargo module instead of a turret, and so it can do those cargo runs. It can do the fighting. It can do all those other little things, but it would also benefit from being in a fleet, because it can still take on that fighter role. So that in our fighter ships is really our one that's a 50-50. It can do either equally well.
Yeah, so you can see why it took a while to go through this list, because we had a lot of back and forth. But yeah, so the next bunch there, as you can see, are some of the racing ships, and that'll go on from this list onto the next one, and I'll just bring that up now. And so the other one that's on this list is the Mustang Races. So you've got all the racing ships, and we've put them as 75-25, mainly because when you're not racing with these ships on their own, in the universe, they're most likely to be A to B vehicle. But then, like the other snub ships we talked about earlier, these ships may be used as a snub ship in something like the 890 Chump. We looked at the measurements, and they're all about the same in size, and we find they can fit in. And Algared will tell you there's a lot of people that when they brought a 890 Chump and it came with one X85, they asked Algared, you let them know.
Yeah, they were saying, hey, will my M50 fit in here? Can I fit two 85Xs? Hey, if I don't take two 85Xs, can I fit a 300i in the ship? And that was one of the big questions I can remember being asked in terms of what ships will fit. And I don't think we ever really got an answer to that question. Old age, I can't remember.
We've really only got measurement to go on, don't we? And that's what we went on today. Where the X85 was bigger than all those ships, so we thought a very safe bet to say these ships should
will fit. Apart from the 300, which we didn't actually measure, but it's bigger than the 85.
Well, yeah. So rule the 300 out at the moment, but that's something people were dreaming about. But yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's a dream, not necessarily something we can confirm. After that, we've got the Merchantman.
No, you missed the Starfarer.
Oh, sorry, I missed the Starfarer. Sorry, I just want to talk about the Merchantman.
So, all right, well, I'll do the Starfarer then. So the Starfarer, basically, we put as 40-60 because we feel in safe space you'll be able to run this on your own, no problems. It's got those rear-facing turrets, so if you get in trouble, just try and run and shoot your way out of it. But it'll benefit immensely from being a fleet, because we'll be able to refuel everyone in the fleet, and just, you're only as fast as your slowest ship in a fleet, so if you're stopping less frequently because this thing's stopping everyone up, then you can just keep going and going without having to stop. It's a no-brainer. So yeah, Merchantman, Algared.
Yep. All right, the Merchantman, 50-50. This is because the Merchantman was billed as that blockade runner. So it can function by itself. Just by if it's a blockade runner, it has to be able to function by itself and go fast. But it is also a ship, just because of its size and the weaponry on it, also works really nicely supporting other ships, either it being cargo and supply, or just being adding extra firepower to those ships in that group. I know there are people who've talked about having putting merchantmen in with their hull ships to give them that extra armament and defense. So yeah, it's a 50-50 ship as far as I'm concerned.
The Hull A and Hull B, unlike its C, D, and E counterparts, can do solo runs on their own because they're light and inexpensive. But it can also, unload those C, D, and E to planet, and it can also do runs in a fleet if it really has to over really long distances. But obviously, if you're doing that, you're much better to take the bigger ones. So that's going to be labelled at 50-50.
Yeah.
You can probably do the next 3 in one go, Algared.
Yeah, I was certainly thinking the Orion and Reclaimer. Those two ships, they are big industrial ships. We've got them as 25-75. They can function, and same with the Endeavour, they can function by themselves. They can do the jobs they need to by themselves without support. But because they're so big, because they're lightly armoured, or have very light armaments, and because they tend to be slow and cumbersome, these ships will benefit and almost have an essential need for having an escort. And so these ships do need to have, or benefit greatly from having another ship with them.
Same thing with the Endeavour. I just smacked that right on the end.
Yeah.
Why not? Because it's exactly the same thing. It can function on its own. It can even got the little mothership element where it can take off from itself. But yeah, fundamentally, they will work better in a fleet because it's like a mobile city and all that stuff. Crucible, I think that speaks for itself. It's kind of like a large Vulcan. While you take it out there, it's only me as good as the ships that are around it. It's keeping them maintained and in top tip condition. It really is going to function a lot better having the fleet around it. But then at the same time, it can be on its own and kind of a little bit like a mobile repair service petrol station-y type of thing where you can stop and get fixed.
Yep. And before we move on to the others, the Vulcan is 75-25. It can do the same job as the Crucible, but when we were looking at it in terms of its role in the fleet, we thought if it's a choice of, if you've got to take a repair ship and you've got nothing else, a Vulcan would be what you'd take. But if you've got the choice, Vulcan or Crucible, you'd take the Crucible because it can do more. But the Vulcan is also a ship that can function very nicely on its own. So that was that one. We then come to the ship that kind of started the whole discussion, the Terrapin, because it was in the original question. It was the one that was compared to the Mercury. And the Terrapin was said, this is a ship that can't function by itself. And when we thought about it, and we actually went, well, no, it benefits from being in a fleet. But this ship, we actually both thought, no, this is a ship that you could actually go exploring with. It's the type of ship I would imagine mapping wormholes in. It's armored, and so it can take a lot more damage. So if you're, it's not going to have that, but hopefully not going to have those problems with falling out of a jump point and being damaged.
If you run it through, literally most of the time it's on its own. Even when it's with the fleet, it's way out in front of the fleet, sending a message back going, yeah, the way's clear. Almost like a minesweeper or whatever you call it. Make sure the way is clear. And then you've got, like you said, going through warp points or wormholes looking to the other side to see what's there. Not only that, if you put a different scanner on it, you might be able to look in for mineral nodes, go out and find special things that you can take the data back and sell and make money off. So I think that's why I've put it 60-40, because yes, it really does benefit with being with a fleet, but there is a lot you can do. Excuse me. A lot you can do that benefits on your own as well as being with a fleet.
Yeah, and that one was like when we first looked at it, we said, oh yeah, it's a fleet ship, definitely. But then as we started looking at what it does and how it operates within a fleet, we went, well, actually, it is operating by itself. So, which why its numbers went up. The Hammerhead.
Similar situation again.
Similar situation.
Patrol craft, but I can't see any reason why someone wouldn't have that as an example, covering your big industrial ships that we just mentioned. Like it's no brainer.
Or covering your capital ships. It's made to be your AA ship. It's I'm just thinking of the Australian Navy's plans for the future, and they're planning on a couple of destroyers that are just AA platforms. That's their main focus, and having a whole pile of modular frigates that work with them. And the Hammerhead's kind of your AA destroyer. So yeah, it's a ship that can function by itself, but it's certainly one that'll function quite well in a fleet.
So we move on to the Hercules C2 and M2. And I guess you can almost check the Apollo in there as well because it's 50-50, but these ships are basically cargo ships, but they can work with a fleet or they can work independently on their own. It depends again whether you're in safe space or unsecured space. So, and the Apollo is a little bit different, where it can work with the fleet or it can be outside a combat zone, just solely respawning people in. So that's why that's 50-50.
But even by themselves, like the Hercules are supposedly quick enough to be able to run away. They do have some firepower, so hopefully enough to make people think twice. But they're going to be ships that also benefit from being in that fleet operation. And same with the Apollo. The Apollo, while it doesn't have as much guns or weaponry, it is fast, it can flee, it can run. It's also a ship that is made as a clinic. You go down on planet and set up a medical clinic.
And the final ship is the Mercury, which was also in the Truth Hurts comment. And he thought it was really a solo ship. And when we kind of played this through in our head, we agreed with him mostly. But because it's got a really large cargo bay, like something like, one of the constellations, you could just fundamentally, if you wished, use it to take cargo if you didn't have another ship that was appropriate. It's also fast, so it kind of works a little bit like a blockade runner, almost like a mini merchantman in a way. So we thought that it could also do a bit of fleet stuff as well, and I think that's kind of what we put it there.
And with its computers and its info running capability, it would be the type of ship we'd hope would be able to help decode messages, or so we saw a value of it working in a fleet. But as we've said, we actually figured it can actually operate pretty much by itself, and so hence why it's there. So that's our list going, and it basically covers every ship in the lineup.
Game.
Although we didn't mention the Vulture, which I think
we have missed that one.
We did miss that one, but I think
it'll be a solo. It's an advanced
advanced starter, and so it would go in our solo list.
Yeah, you can tell we worked on this list for a bit over 5 hours, and there's still things that we're still discussing as we went through, and we changed some things there on the fly. But this was a really hard thing to go through and do every ship in the game, so we've kind of taken 5 hours and condensed it into a very short, concise thing for you. So I hope you'll take our on-the-fly approach with the things. But yeah. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I was just going to say on that note, don't forget we do have our Discord channel as well as which we'd love you to join us and leave a comment. We do answer those. Also leave a comment to the video. If you like us, like us. If you don't like us, don't like us. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you like, because hey, it makes us feel good and comfy and nice and happy. And
you see our ugly mugs again.
That's right, and you see our ugly mugs again.
All right. So this has been.
I've been Algared.
And I've been Execute, and we'll catch you guys next time.
All right. Take care.